Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Brookshire County, just outside of Portland, on our recently added boat line that is moving logs and planks around in order to create tools. And in this video, we're gonna look back at what we did in the last video and redo some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of delivering tools, as well as upgrading our fuel line over by Houston, so that we can start to deliver fuel to the other cities in the area. And so for this video, we'll be mostly in this corner of the map yet again, focusing on these three cities of Portland, Salt Lake City, and Houston. And mainly, the largest thing that we're going to do in this video is upgrading this fuel line. So we'll come through and we'll detail all those areas a little more to get them to sort of the next level, just so they fit in with sort of how much they're producing. And then I think we're going to replace these boat lines that we have delivering our tools with a train line, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, this river right here is getting very full of boat traffic, and it's not entirely realistic that there would be this many boats all in one area delivering resources. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but also I think it could prove to be much more cost effective to deliver by train, since boats are so slow and they take a long time to get to place. We would need an absurd amount of boats in order to fully deliver the resources that we would need and sort of at a frequency that we would need. And so by doing that by train, we can have much faster vehicles, as well as the ability to sort of adjust and customize our capacity. And I think just overall, in terms of resource movement around the map, doing it by train would be a much more easier option to work with. And so after we're done upgrading our fuel line, we're going to add a train line that will pretty much go from this tools factory, and then it'll link up and meet with our existing passenger rail, which hopefully shouldn't conflict too much since we only have two trains going back and forth, and their frequency is fairly low considering how long they have to go. So we'll try to share this set of tracks between our passenger and cargo lines, and then we can set up a stop in Salt Lake City to drop off tools, and then we can set up another stop near Houston to drop off tools as well. And then we will pick up fuel from our Houston port, where then on the return trip we can drop off some fuel in Salt Lake City, and then we can drop some fuel off here at the tools factory, where we can just have a simple 1 or 2 boat line shuttling the fuel across the river, where it then can be delivered into Portland. And so let's waste no time getting into it. We're going to detail this side, this oil well here. I don't think we're going to go quite as large as this one, but we will have it sort of have its own personality. And this stop does cover both industries, so I think we'll keep it as just this one station for now until we decide that we need to split it up. But anyway, with that, let's get into the detailing, and we'll be back once we're done with this oil well. Alright, and so this is going to be what we go with for our other oil well. I think it fits quite nicely in here, and I think this definitely is starting to match the production that we're getting out of it, as both of these, although they're producing at the maximum they can at level 1, we're only transporting about half of it from each, or I guess maybe a third, but once we get through and upgrade everything, those numbers should be much higher, so I'm okay to leave this off here, and we can move on to the oil refinery end of our upgrade. Alright, and I think this will do it for our oil refinery upgrades. I think this new area over here looks really well, and it does leave some room to be upgraded, so we'll leave that to have some space. But lastly, we just need to move over to our fuel refinery here, which appears to have no extra detailing or context with it, so we'll add a bit of that, and then I think we'll be ready to start upgrading the lines. Alright, and I think this will be about as far as we go for our fuel refinery upgrades. Again, it was just another small addition here next to our port, but I think I still want to let this industry upgrade and fill out its plot before we start to add some context over here and over here, just so that whatever we build will make sense once this is a little bit more upgraded. But anyway, I'm happy with what we've added here. I think it looks good, it fits nicely, and we're ready to ramp up all of our other lines. And so while doing this, we're going to want to take into account the fuel requirements for each city and factor that into our final line rates. So if we take a look here, we'll do some rough rounding just to make this easier on us, but about 190 for Houston, 15 for Salt Lake City, and another 15 for Portland. I believe that gets us up to around 220-ish for our overall demand. And so remember, we'll have to double that, since at some point in here our oil gets refined down from a 2-to-1 ratio. So we'll want our line rates to be at about 440, probably 450, just to account for the growth once Salt Lake City and Portland start receiving their fuel. So we'll come in here and we'll start duplicating vehicles until we get to about 450. 2 more should get us just about there. So for our truck line, we should be good. And then next would be our boat line here, which we might need to get quite a few more boats coming in and out. 2 more might not be enough. Let's get 1 more and see where that gets us. 463 is okay. That just means our boats aren't going to leave entirely full from here. But again, we do have some growth that we need to account for, so we can always just duplicate a few more trucks just to get us so that our boats will always be leaving full. And then the last bit of this line that we need to upgrade is this one here that actually takes the oil to the fuel refinery. And this is at a rate of 210, which is actually pretty close to where we want it. But I think we'll just duplicate this once, just so that we know for sure we will be moving everything we need to. So I believe with that change, our whole fuel line should be able to now accommodate the growth in Salt Lake City and Portland, as well as supplying maximum demand to Houston as well. We'll just need to make sure our trucks are delivering where they need to, but I think now we can start to get our train line set up and think about how we're going to start to do that. And so coming back to our train line and thinking about how we're going to want to do that, starting here in our tools factory, we'll probably get a train station placed somewhere here, and then we'll run that track around the outside of our forest so that we're not just cutting straight through it with a train line. And then we're going to bridge over this river, and somewhere in here is where we're going to end up merging back into our existing line. Now the tricky part is in Salt Lake City figuring out where we want our cargo station to go, because we want to reuse as much of this existing rail as possible, but we also don't want to just plop a cargo station right next to our passenger train station, since that's not usually very desirable, and placing a cargo station over here is pretty far away from where the rest of our resources are coming in. And ideally we'd have our train station down somewhere in this area, but unfortunately the elevation change from where our existing rail is down to here is quite a lot, so trying to make that work would be pretty challenging, unless maybe we brought it out over here and then cut through the city. But I'm not sure if I want to cut off the coastline with a rail line. And so I think what we might do is just simply get something in this area of Salt Lake City. Of course, this area is pretty hilly, so we'll have to figure something out in order to get a pretty decent cargo station in here. But once we get that placed, we can then hopefully merge it back into this line, or at least bypass this station here, and then it can continue on this way, where then we'll probably split off somewhere around here and slowly descend where we will have our Houston cargo train station down here where the port and everything else is. And so let's start by placing down our easier stations, and then we'll sort of just figure out where we're going to end up placing our station in Salt Lake City. Now for the station, we're probably going to want to go as big as possible just so we get the largest buildings in here, and then we'll trim it down to the size that we want it after we place it. So we'll get this placed right about here, and then we can just quickly come in here and delete some of these platforms and tracks. And now that we pretty much have what we want for our train station, I think we'll leave the buildings on it as is for now. We can always come back and make them bigger as more trains start to come and go through here. So we'll leave this. It should be attached to our port, which we see. And then let's head over to our tools factory and get this one placed. Alright, so this is what we'll go for our tools train station. I think this has more than enough storage for what we'll need. And I think we can start to lay out our tracks. So let's start over on the Tools Factory end. We'll connect up in here, and then we'll head over to Houston, connect up to that train station, and then once we do all that, we can figure out Salt Lake City. Alright, so our connection coming out of the Tools Factory is pretty straightforward. We just come around and follow the edge of the river here, stay pretty much out of the way of the forest, and then we slowly ramp up and then come across this bridge where then we have to come down for a bit so that we can merge into here, and then after we do that, we come back over this bridge towards Salt Lake City, which again we'll figure out what we're gonna do more specifically once we get into it. But moving on over to Houston, I believe we should be able to let this play, or actually we'll pause this again because I want to fix a few things in here. I think we can make this a little bit more streamlined now that we have a bit more money and we don't really have to worry much about our trains being able to go up and down slopes quite as much. So we'll straighten all this out so that our passenger trains can go a bit faster. Of course, we'll have to replace those signals, but once we're pulled back to about here, I think we're good. But pretty much it should just be as simple as coming through here and then around and connecting there. Although we still have that 65 mile an hour speed limit that we probably want to avoid. Let's see if we can change that at all. 75, that's okay with me. And then we just need to drag this back around and connect up. Alright, so now I think we're ready to start building our descent down to this train station. And I think it might almost be easier if we start over on this end and then work our way up. So we'll start here. We'll have our crossover before we cross the road, just so that makes things a little bit more simpler. And then pretty much starting from here, we'll slowly start to build our way up. We'll try to keep it a reasonable slope. I think maybe 20% given the amount of height that we have to gain wouldn't be too bad. So then pretty much we'll just have to keep that consistency up all the way. And I think we'll try to meet up somewhere over here. Alright, and so after reworking a few things, we were able to get this slope to work. So we're about between 20 and 25% slope all the way up through until we match or meet up here. And I think this should work out just fine. We shouldn't really have any issues there. But now we can come over and finally figure out what we're gonna do here in Salt Lake City. Now there's a couple of things that I've been floating around in my head for ideas, just to sort of get them out there and to get you guys thinking in case you guys have any better ideas on what we could do. One thing I was thinking is maybe we can loop this around like so, and then we can have a train station somewhere here where then we can come back around and meet up to these tracks. The only worry I have with that is that it'll pretty much take too long to go around there, stop, and then get back and going up there. But I'm not entirely sure if that's really that bad of an idea considering our terrain and everything else going on. So I think maybe it could be worth trying out. Really, my next best option I have in my head is simply placing a cargo station somewhere around here, and we'll just be cutting this corner short as we come through. But I think for the sake of trying to make this realistic and good looking, we'll try to place a station down here and loop around, and we'll see what that does in terms of our money. If we obviously end up losing a ton of money because it takes too long for the train to go around and then go back up, obviously we'll need to fix that. But I really like the idea of that and hope that it should work out. So we will probably need to delete some of these roads and rework some things. So let's get our station placed and get that going first, and then we'll be back once we're ready to start connecting the tracks. Alright, so now we have our station placed here, and I think it works pretty well. We have it placed right between these two pillars of the bridge. If we need to go any bigger with this train station, I'm not sure if we'll be able to do this, but I think this should work out. Now we'll have to grab our tracks. I think it might be best if we work our way around this way, but we'll give ourselves some space to go straight out, like so, and then we can start to build our way up. We'll try to do this at a pretty consistent slope. Alright, so I think I finally have something figured out that will work. So we come through here, come off, and then you'll come down, turn into the station here, and then from there you'll come out, turn, and go underground through a tunnel where it meets at the station, but it hits these bypass lines that we have here. And then after we pass this passenger station is where we'll then meet up here. But I think first we will want to make this bridge 2 tracks instead of just 1, since we will start to have some increased traffic coming through here. So let's first pause, and we'll want to delete that, connect this back up, and then over on this end, we'll delete that connection there. And then we should be able to just drag this across and then connect back up on the other side. And so then the last thing we need to do for this cargo line is bring it around and then merge it back in with these tracks, which we'll have to find a good spot to do that at. I think right here would work. And then just connect everything up, and we should finally be good to start building our train and connecting everything else together. Alright, so now we can start to think about the train that we want to get running on here. I believe we can just reuse our train depot all the way out here. However, that's very far away from the tools factory, so we'll probably just build one. I suppose we could build one out here near Salt Lake City and connect it up in this area, since that's pretty much what we're already going with here. So this would be a nice area to add some type of extra stuff that we could use. Alright, so now we have this placed. We can start to think about the train that we're going to have running on here. I think we'll start with one, just as sort of a proof of concept and make sure that everything functions as it should. And then once that one train sort of proves that everything is working okay, we'll duplicate that maybe one more or two more times until we can meet the demand that we have everywhere else. Alright, so this is the train that we're going to go with. It's a 422 Atlantic engine with a bunch of these box cars and then a couple of tank cars on the end. We'll adjust the amount needed as we see whatever demand we get, but we'll start out, and of course we'll start out here at the tools factory, where we will load tools and unload fuel, since we'll be unloading fuel for Portland. And then we'll come into this station here, which it looks like it is routing properly, which is exactly what we want. And so this will unload tools, and it's not going to pick anything up here because we have to remember it has to go to Houston first. So then it'll come all the way out here to our Houston station, where it will unload some more tools and then load fuel. And then on its way back, it's going to stop back here in Salt Lake City, where it will unload fuel. And then lastly, come back to the tools factory, where we already have everything set for that. Now, hopefully this works out. The return trip might be a little rough, given that demand for fuel is a little low for Salt Lake City and Portland. But if we can make enough money to cover the expenses of this, I think this line will be a really nice and interesting line to have in this whole area of the map. And so let's just take a moment to watch this train as it comes out of the train depot, and then we'll watch it go around and meet up to our main line, and then pretty much after that we'll just follow it around, make sure everything works, make sure it's picking up the amount of resources needed, and then we'll go from there. And so there's actually a lot more that we need to do before this train is actually functional. We do need to set up all of our lines running into our cities, so we'll need Salt Lake City to receive tools and fuel from this line. We'll need to do the same for Houston. We'll need to set up that tools line. And then we'll need to set up the boat line near Portland to deliver the fuel across the river there. And so let's start here in Salt Lake City and make sure we're delivering tools and fuel where those need to go. And it looks like I don't see anywhere for... Oh, our fuel is over here. So I think we'll set up a separate drop-off point for fuel just so we get our trucks out of the same area of the city. But tools will get dropped off here, fuel will get dropped off there, and I think we can start to decommission these lines. So we'll grab these, sell those boat lines, and then we can pretty much just get rid of this line altogether. And so then our tools line will, instead of going to here in Salt Lake City, it will come over, or from the port, it'll come over to our train station to pick up its resources. And then of course we'll need to set up another line to deliver the fuel. So we'll grab a couple of these trucks, and those will also go from our train station into the city itself. And then for Houston, we do have tools coming in here. Again, we'll have to pretty much get rid of this line, so we'll sell all these vehicles, and then we can delete this line altogether. And then I believe we can just keep our tool truck line the same. Looks like we might actually need a lot more trucks to deliver the demand. We had about 200 demand for tools in Houston, so we'll duplicate that maybe one more time. 192 I'm okay with. We'll wait and see how things shake out once everything else starts going. But now that should be good for Houston and Salt Lake City. It looks like our train just left the tools factory with some tools, so that's exciting to see. We'll see sort of what ends up happening with the line rates and everything there. So next we'll just need a quick sort of shuttle loop to go between here and our Portland port in order to deliver fuel into Portland. And so because we're transporting fuel, we can just simply use one of these boats. We'll just use one for now, as that should hopefully be okay considering the short distance. That will then go from here right across the river, and we'll want to make sure everything lines up properly. So here we'll make sure it's only loading fuel, and then here at Portland it unloads everything. And then we'll need to deliver that fuel, which we can reuse the same stop, but again I think we're going to build a new one just to keep our traffic sort of separated. And then we'll start out with just a few trucks at first, and then have those go from here directly to our unload stop, and we'll make sure it's only loading fuel as well. And so we're not seeing any fuel starting to pile up here on the Houston end, but you might have to wait for demand to slowly build up across the map before it starts to request those resources. We might also have to wait for all of our fuel to do a full cycle through all of our boat lines and stuff. So it could be a while until we see fuel starting to pile up in Houston. But I believe our train is just about to make its first stop here in Salt Lake City. We can see it coming across the bridge here. I really like how this train looks. I think the Atlantic is a really cool looking engine here. But let's just see how it handles coming into the station. So coming around at a pretty nice top speed of 45 miles an hour. It doesn't have to slow down too much to come in here. And then as it comes downhill, it'll probably have to start slowing down in order to get onto the much sharper curve into the station. But because it's decelerating coming into the station anyway, a tight curve like this isn't too much of an issue. Now as it pulls in here, let's see if it unloads half of the tools or only a couple of tools. So yeah, it looks like it just dropped off like 5 tools, and the rest seem to be going to Houston. We can see we hardly earned any money from that, but again, this is its first trip around, so obviously things aren't going to be too balanced there. But the big moneymaker portion of it hopefully will be the delivery in Houston and then the fuel on the return trip back. And so while we wait for that to start sorting itself out, let's take a look and make sure our line rates for everything is where it needs to be. So here in Houston, it's asking for 200 tools, I believe this is our stop for those tools, and I think we need to adjust that and move it down just a block so that it covers all of the tools required in the city. So let's pause this quick so we don't break anything, and we'll just move this down a street. That should cover all of the tools pretty much. And as for this tool line, we'll want to update the vehicles so that it's capable of bringing 200 tools into the city. And so 194 is pretty good. Everything else in Houston seems to be doing very well. Since we started delivering tools, the city's population has just exploded. You can see here mostly in the shopping facilities, since I believe that's what the tools fuels. So everything seems to be doing very well here in Houston, and it's actually starting to fill out a lot of our grids out here. And we're even getting some development across the river, which is also exciting to see. So hopefully soon we'll start to see Houston really start to spread out, and we can start to properly build it out and get a real transportation network going through here. So moving on to Salt Lake City, let's make sure things are balanced here with our lines here. So we have a current rate of 64 on our tools, which actually matches up almost perfectly with the amount of tools required in Salt Lake City. And for our fuel line, really this has a rate of 5, and our current line has 57. I think we'll just sell 3 of these trucks, and whatever that rate is, we'll stick with, because obviously that's going to go up from 5. We shouldn't need to really worry about that too much. And here comes our train on the return trip. Unfortunately, it didn't pick up any fuel, but we should start to see fuel finally popping up here in Houston, which we do see. So we can see here some fuel is finally starting to get distributed to this station. So next time this train comes around, it should pick up some fuel. And then lastly, let's just check Portland. Portland only has a need for 11 fuel, and our trucks are currently doing 64, which is, again, way too much for what it is. So we'll just get 3 of those. I think 3 should be just fine. And it looks like our fuel boat has finally started going back and forth here. This is operating at a rate of 386. We probably shouldn't need to replace that boat anytime soon. So we'll just leave that to do its thing. Hopefully it doesn't bleed out too much money, as it probably won't be transporting that much fuel back and forth, considering the train's not going to come back and forth that often. But I think now it's pretty much just a matter of figuring out our train rates, making sure with the mixed capacity and mixed goods that it's delivering everything it needs to. This is obviously where the numbers are going to start to get a little bit iffy when we start calculating things. So we'll have to start sort of estimating instead of looking at exact numbers. But I think we'll let this go around once more, and then we'll start to duplicate and adjust this train. And so let's just take a look around the map, see what's going on, see if anything needs any immediate attention. It looks like Tacoma's doing very well. The bus lines seem to be keeping up. I think we just had this train drop off a bunch of people, which is why this station is pretty much full and overloading, but that should sort itself out pretty quickly. I believe this train also left completely full, so that's a good sign. Actually, it didn't leave completely full, but we can take a look here. The finances are a little bit over the place because of the low frequency of the line, but again, I think as this city starts to grow, we'll be able to get a little bit more consistent with all of that, and we should be able to continue to make good money from these trains. And taking a look at our construction materials train, this one seems to be doing very well, always earning us money. Our stone line here also seems to be doing very well. I think the fact that it's pretty much a straight line almost guarantees us that we'll be making money. but that seems to be keeping up just fine. Lincoln is doing well. It's very slowly growing. Of course, we do need to take a look at this tools line here, which we'll probably talk about later in this video. But everything seems to be looking well in this area. Roswell, again, we'll be getting back to this city very soon, but that will get sorted out soon. Everything over in Pittsburgh seems to be doing pretty well, continuing to grow. We will want to build out this side for the industrial buildings, since I believe we have all these roads locked, so the city can't build out itself. But over here we got these commercial buildings. I don't think these have changed much, as Pittsburgh has probably stayed the same for quite a bit since we've not really given it too much attention. And then Allentown seems to be doing very well, filling out the grid that we built out in the last video. I believe we can take a look at the chart here and see that this recently had a big population explosion, so that's doing well. And our train line between Allentown and Pittsburgh seems to be doing very well as well. You can see there's only a few periods where it doesn't make money, and that's probably just due to some weird frequency issues. But I think overall across the board, our whole map is starting to do very well. Alright, and so our train has finally reached Houston and picked up its fuel, and just initial observations before diving deep into numbers and everything. I think we need more boxcars and a few less tank cars, especially if we're going to be duplicating this train. It only picked up about half of the fuel that we have here, so maybe we bump this down to 2 or even 3 cars, and then maybe duplicate the train. But if we take a look here, Salt Lake City still hasn't received any fuel, but it should soon. And then out here, yeah, this tools factory is producing way more than enough for this train to take all the tools it needs. So let's just come in here and we'll do a quick sort of rough manage of this train. So we'll cut this down to 3 tank cars, and I think we'll add 5, maybe even 6, as long as our ratings here look good and the train can still go up medium slopes. I think we'll be just fine. Maybe we even add 2 more box cars just to see how that goes. But I believe that'll be about as long as we'll want this train to be. So we can see it coming through here now. It's much longer than it was before. I'm not sure why it slowed down there. Maybe some weird thing because it was going through a signal, but hopefully it starts speeding back up. Maybe it has to go 10 miles an hour through there, so maybe we don't have that be a part of the station. I don't know. We'll have to take a look at that next time the train goes through. But the fact that it does slow down there does mean that we're losing time and money going through all that trouble. But one of the main portions I want to take a look at, especially coming into here, is making sure it can go back uphill without wasting too much time. But here it comes into the station with its fuel. I believe it'll drop off just a little bit here, and then even more when we reach Portland. So you can start to see how much money we'd be making from this. Obviously we added a lot more boxcars, so this spike here should go up a bit more. And it looks like our train is okay accelerating through here. And again, all this is sort of a transition period, so it's not too detrimental that it's not going full speed through there. But then once it comes back out here, it should be able to accelerate to its max speed all the way back to the tools factory. Alright, and so now we can start to get into our numbers of how much we're actually transporting. And we're going to just go off of tools when we do this. We'll keep fuel a little extra. But again, I believe we have about 157 tools in Houston that we need to transport. I feel like that number went down, but anyway, 158 in Houston and 44 in Salt Lake City. So let's just round up to about 220 for tools needed. And if we take a look at our line rate here, we're operating at a line rate of 93. But if we take, in order to figure out how much is actually being transported, we need to take a look at the capacity of our train. And so doing this rough calculation of 240 divided by the max train capacity of 276, we can see our train is about 87% tools. So 87% of 93 is 80-ish. So we'll just round to 80. So with one of these trains, we're moving 80 tools for our rate. And if we want an overall of 220, we will need to get 3 trains going on this line. I believe that will get us to 240, but that allows for growth and everything else. And then we're not going to really worry about fuel, as that number is so low. As long as we have like 2 or 3 cars per train, we should be good for now. And then we can adjust that once fuel starts to become more in demand. And so let's get this rolling. I'm not sure where, if we duplicate this, where that train's going to come out. It looks like it does come out of Salt Lake City here. And hopefully it's going back on the return trip. So we'll send that train out that way. We'll give it a bit of time, and then we'll duplicate and add a third one. And then after that, we should be completely good to go then. And it does look like here, we did just catch it, that this does limit us to 10 miles an hour. So we are going to fix that. It should just be as simple as pausing, and then we'll delete these station tracks. And then we can just come back in and fill these back in. And now our train shouldn't have to slow down to go through there. Alright, now that both trains are almost at their destinations, we'll duplicate and get our third train. And I think we're pretty much good to let these just start rolling out. So let's take a look at everything we've done in this video so far. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some future projects and just double check that everything we've done in this video is working out exactly how we want it to. Alright, and so now that we're back, let's talk about some future projects that we can start to work on. And I think the next one we're going to work on is this tools line down here, revamping this. I know we've brought this up a few times, but I think next video will finally be when we upgrade this, and we'll finally give Roswell some love. We'll really redo the street network, make sure it's built up and primed for success. Hopefully it will grow more than with the reworked road network and more tools coming in. And then we'll have to start thinking of some resource to bring through here. I guess that will probably have to be machines, which now that we do have a good amount of money coming through, maybe a train line might not be as unrealistic as it seems, considering we'd probably need to tunnel through here, stay in a low spot, and then follow along the water here in order to make that work. But that might not be the worst thing, although it could prove to be a little unprofitable. We'll just have to figure that out on our own, but we will need to get some more resources coming into Roswell, especially since it's demanding machines and goods. However, we only have machines right now. And then, of course, sort of piggybacking off that, Lincoln could also use some love. When we redo this tools line, we could probably rework Lincoln a little bit and just help to push this passenger line a bit more, as it seems to be struggling a bit since it's not leaving with a full load of passengers each time. It does seem like we have some people waiting, but not enough to really justify upgrading our buses. So I think it just ends up being a city growth thing. Same thing with Tacoma, figuring out how we can get some more resources coming into Tacoma so that can start to grow. I don't believe we can easily get any resources here. Maybe we can bring fuel and tools by train from Houston, or maybe we can, by extension, bring tools from over near Lincoln. We could truck these somewhere in Lincoln and then by boat send them up to Tacoma. That's not a bad idea to explore, especially since we're just looking to grow these cities. But I think for now, that's all of the sort of future projects I have in mind, mostly focusing on this end of the map. Since we've spent so much time by Houston, Portland, and Salt Lake City, we can start to give that end of the map a rest. And then I think after that, we can come and focus on Allentown and Pittsburgh a bit more, but that's obviously going to be a few videos out, so we're not going to really start to think about that for a while. Alright, now taking a look at our new line that we placed, I just think this boat is way too much at the moment. We can see here with its finances, it's just losing us money. We can pretty much just downsize to whatever the cheapest boat is, and we'll probably be okay with that as long as it can take fuel. So it seems like that'll probably just be this Regi boat. We'll do that. That should save us a lot of money, especially considering the low amount of fuel it'll be moving. But hopefully, once Portland starts to request more fuel, which slowly over time this number will grow, we can upgrade this boat. However, taking a look at our train line, let's just see how much we get from, I believe this should be almost full demand coming into Houston. I believe this should be a good amount, about 6 million, which is perfect. And then it looks like it picked up about 15 fuel-ish, so that should be okay. Again, it'll slowly pick up more fuel as demand increases, but overall, taking a look at the finances so far, things seem to be looking in the right direction. Last financial period, we made about a $5 million profit on this line, and that'll only grow as demand continues to grow, since our train isn't really running at max capacity with its fuel cars not even being entirely fuel. But I think this train has a lot of potential, and as long as it's running near or at capacity, we should have no issue making money on this line. And so I'm really glad that this whole area worked out, because I really do like it. I think it looks good. We'll have to figure out how we can weave it into the fabric of the city as Salt Lake City continues to grow and expand, but I think for an industrial area, this is a really nice layout that we have here. But let me know what you guys think about this area, if there was a better way we could have done it, if you guys like this, if having the station go under the tracks is realistic. That's something I'd just want to double check on and make sure we're not doing anything too outrageous with our building, but I think for the most part, that's pretty much it for this video. And so with that, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.